Hello everybody and welcome to day 2 of the 2022 preseason test here at the Circuit Pour Ricard. The last day here at the Circuit Pour Ricard in Le Castellet before we head off to Hockenheim for the final 2 days. I'm your commentator JW97 and I'm joined today by F2 commentator Robert Ionescu. Rob, are you there?
Welcome once again to Pour Ricard.
I think there might be a little bit of lag issues with Rob there because it seemed like he responded a little bit delayed there. He did mention there is rain where he is, so it might affect his internet connection a little bit. So, are you
Is
there,
it better
Rob?
now?
Sounds like it.
Okay, great. Well, good to see you, everybody. Welcome to Pour Ricard in Le Castellet. Should be an entertaining day of preseason. There is a very small chance we could get some rain, so we're gonna see what happens.
Indeed, as you can see at the plus 30-minute mark, there is a little line there. It's about a 5% chance of rain when we get to the plus 30 mark, but we might get some dry running today, unlike yesterday where it rained towards the end of the session and nobody really improved. So, I think without further ado, let's get on to the second day of preseason testing here at the Circuit Pour Ricard then. And hopefully, it should be quite a good session here at Pour Ricard. It was yesterday, of course. Some very interesting results, it's fair to say. Of course, we'll see if those continue into day 2, of course, during the dry running. But I think from what we gathered yesterday, Rob, from what we saw, Red Bull looked to still have a very good car. Mercedes appear to have a better car than what they did last season. Renault looked to still be good, despite some reliability concerns still, as we saw with Prins at the beginning of the session. AlphaTauri and Haas, I think the most talked about ones, they look to have made a really big step up in terms of performance. Ferrari and Lamborghini look to have dropped back. Same for Alfa Romeo a tad bit, but they still look relatively where you'd expect them to be. Williams look roughly the same as where they were last season, despite the engine change. But I think it's fair to say McLaren and Aston Martin, they look like they've really gone backwards during this preseason test. We'll wait and see if that's the case today, of course. But worried faces at McLaren and Aston Martin after day 1.
Absolutely. Obviously, one of the McLarens didn't get a lot of running in, so his time is not representative. But Aston Martin are definitely struggling quite a lot, as it seems. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, indeed. And on the topic of the ones we talked about who look to have made a big step up, of course, we'll have to wait and see if that continues into day 2. Haas and AlphaTauri look to have made a really big step up. Now, AlphaTauri, I don't think it's too much of a surprise if they've made a step up, given their history in the series. But I think for Haas, given the last few seasons, I think that caught everybody off guard.
Looks like Rich Energy finally paid them.
Who knows, really? But in this case, I think it's Esso who's paying them because they're, of course, the title sponsors now for Haas. But anyway, we've got 3 cars coming out on the track. One of them is a Lamborghini, one of them is a Renault, and one of them is a Mercedes. There is some rain on the screen, as you can see. There is actually some rain on the screen, but we're not expecting the track to wetten up until potentially either towards the end of the session or after the session. So, yeah, it's only rain on the screen right now, but again, we're not expecting it to wet up at this stage. So Patel is the first driver out on track, and I think it's fair to say for Lamborghini, there's maybe a cause for concern for their team, because after what was a very good first ever season for them in 2021, it seems that they may have dropped back a bit, Rob.
Well, you could say it was a little odd to see them performing so well in their season 1. Of course, it's a difficult sport. This is the first time they're having to build a car right after a season. The other teams, of course, have built their cars season after season, sometimes better, sometimes stronger. Lamborghini still don't have that much experience. It looks like this car might be a little bit slower than what we expect.
Perhaps, as Patel now then making his way through the double right-hander of the Boisse corners, as he will now make his way towards the left-hander now then. And he'll be preparing to start his first flying lap along with the Renault and the Mercedes that are behind them at this stage. Another team that I think is also probably going to be a bit concerned, Rob, is Ferrari. Of course, you may remember in the second half of the season, Ferrari were in form, really. And we said had they had that form at the beginning of the season in 2021, they could have possibly been winning the championship. Well, it seems the team may have gone a bit backwards.
Absolutely. you have to remember they took the Constructors' Championship to the final race. Obviously, they weren't able to win it, but they performed quite well in that second half, and looks like they're going to need to perform just as well in the second half of the season this time. Because at the moment, at the start of it all, they don't look that competitive. I see we have Ben Swellinger making a move on the Williams, fails to get it done.
Yep, I'm trying to figure out which Williams that is. In fact, I think that's Jamie Griffiths, in fact, that he was trying to overtake. As meanwhile, looks like the Renault's going to get by. As Michael Mocho currently stuck behind one of the Aston Martins. Of course, we mentioned that Aston Martin look like they've gone a little bit backwards, whereas Haas look to have taken a big step forward. And I think Mocho will want to dispose of this Aston Martin pretty quickly before we get to the first corner. Let's see if he can get past the Aston before the start of the lap. Now then, the Aston Martin, of course, being Andre Vaderi, as Mocho looks to the inside, gets later on the brakes and gets the move done. But I wonder if his time may have been a little bit compromised going through into the first corner there. But yeah, in terms of McLaren, of course, we mentioned that they look like they've gone backwards, of course. Of course, this is their first season with BMW power. And, well, it looks like, from what we've seen, BMW may be starting things quite slow at the moment.
We have to remember that Ricard isn't exactly the best benchmark for engine power, so who knows really how quick that engine is. But I think definitely on the chassis side, McLaren have produced something weaker than before. I don't expect them to be winning races this season, for example.
Meanwhile, because of Carr and Perinin getting held up by Patel, it meant Galloway went to the top, but that quickly got beaten by George Roque, who does a 1 minute 30.803 in the Red Bull. As Mocha, meanwhile, looks like he's getting a little bit crossed up through into that right-hander there, but he goes 2 tenths up on Roque in the first sector. I do wonder, given the gap between him and Roque, I wonder if Roque got held up. But Lopez has now beaten him.
Smashed it.
Yeah, Lopez is 7 tenths quicker, so I wonder if Roque may have got held up on his lap. As Chatfield now goes up into third, only just able to get in front of teammate Jake Galloway. Willow slots into sixth, and of course he only got 1 flying lap yesterday if you watch pre-season testing, because of course he pulled over thanks to a suspension failure, and that meant he only got 1 lap as Patel has a big moment going
for
through.
Patel.
That's the bus stop chicane he's just lost it at, and well, that just looked like a simple driver error there.
Yeah, so let's take another look at it. Carried a lot of speed into the corner, but just understeered. That threw him off his line, and then he picked up a slide in the second part of the chicane.
Yep, in fact, you can see Carr was actually trying to overtake him into the bus stop, but Carr couldn't find a way through, surprisingly, and, well, yeah, the rear just got away from him there.
Yeah. Thankfully, he hasn't crashed into the wall. He's able to resume. Though this lap and these tires are quite knackered, I'd say. Mocho goes second fastest in the Haas, quite impressive. Byrne goes fifth.
Yep, Mocho goes second, Quarg into third, just ahead of Roque. Meanwhile, Byrne goes fifth. I wonder if the Red Bulls had issues with traffic on their first lap, because they've roughly got about the same sort of lap time. And
Byrne is on an improvement as we're looking at him.
Oh, yes, indeed. And in fact, Yuri is just what he's just mentioned to us in the chat. He has actually reminded us. Remember, of course, that Yuri mentioned that he's actually changed the physics a little bit with these cars, of course, from season to season. Of course, he's expecting the cars, of course, to be a little bit more grippy, but also at the same time to be a little bit more oversteery. And I think what we just saw there with Patel might be an example of that, Rob.
Yeah, could be the case, and it's definitely something very interesting to ponder, as now Franco Lopez is being stuck behind that Williams. Martins improves, go 18 fastest. Lopez is definitely not going to improve, but Mercedes, they're looking much more capable than they were this time around last season.
Yeah, indeed. Obviously, a thing that was an Achilles tendon for Mercedes last season was the inconsistencies in qualifying. We saw in the races that they had very good race pace, but in qualifying, they just couldn't seem to hook it up. Well, it seems so far from early indications in testing, they might have got that sorted out.
Yeah, so it seems. However, nobody tests with qualifying style fuel loads in these testing sessions. They're all fueled quite heavily, so the first test of actual full tilt action from these cars will be, well, the first qualifying session, of course. That's when we'll get them get them go all out, and Gal improves into 9th place. So I think these lap times are more representative for the race pace, or could be the case. Lopez is doing quite well at the moment. Mercedes, definitely a big step up, and I imagine they've stepped up in qualifying as well.
Perhaps indeed, and given that Byrne has just had to negotiate an Aston Martin there, I think that does confirm that Byrne did get held up during his flying lap, so maybe we haven't seen the best yet from Evan Byrne, who, if you didn't see testing yesterday, he actually topped the session by, I think it was 2 tenths ahead of Amar Karic, who's going to evolve, as Wilson has a big understeer moment going through into the left-hander there, and it nearly allows her teammate Bence Valdinger to get by. Of course, this is Amelia Wilson's final season in the top class, and she's looking to go out in style, as Bence Valdinger is trying to get through on her into the first corner, but doesn't have enough slipstream to get by, as they've got one of the AlphaTauris going by. That was David Kupok, because as you can see, Kupok has improved on his time. As just looking at the relative pace of all of these cars at the moment, I think it's fair to say that AlphaTauri and Haas, we were wondering if that was going to be the case going into day 2. I think that does confirm that they have made a big step up this season, Rob.
I think Haas could even be faster than the Ferrari.
Perhaps indeed, which I think would be a bit of a concern for Ferrari, given that, of course, Haas use the Ferrari engines as well in the back of their car. So maybe it's obviously not an engine
broken if the guys at Maranello get uppity about it.
Well, you would imagine, of course, that the engine may not be a problem for the Ferraris. I did touch about this, of course, yesterday, that maybe the straight line speed of the Ferrari looks to be better than what it was last season, but it seems that they've kind of gone the opposite, really, because last season we talked about how they had probably one of the best chassis on the grid, but obviously a very underpowered engine. However, it seems this season they've kind of gone the opposite. They've got a very powerful engine, but so far, looking at their testing times, their chassis may not be great.
If you have good enough variation, you can dodge a dodgy chassis and dodge its weaknesses, I mean. But if your engine is bad, you're gonna struggle to overtake, and you're gonna be sitting duck on the straight. So it's a very interesting change of balance Ferrari has thought of, as Federi's are taken here. But I don't think it's done well for Ferrari, because, yeah, their car overall, the whole package seems to be slower.
Indeed, as Perinen just making his way out of the turn there then, as Griffiths meanwhile improves but stays in last position, and once again it does appear like Aston Martin are struggling. Same goes for McLaren, although Willows, who's managed to be able to do more than one lap unlike yesterday, he is up in 14th place, so there may be a little bit, we did talk about yesterday, because we saw a little bit of straight line speed comparison compared to other engines. It does appear that the BMW engine may have a bit of grunt in the back of their car. Maybe they've got a very good downforce car, but it seems that I think from early indications, as looks like, I think that was that Willows that got overtaken by Mocho there? I'm not sure. No, it was De Rosa, in fact, he overtook. But yeah, early indications are it's looking to possibly be a long season for McLaren.
Yes, definitely, and I'm sure they're very eager to get as much data as possible. They'll be chasing not lap time, they'll be chasing data. And I imagine the first few races this season especially will serve towards them learning to understand their car better, and because you can't just stick an engine into the back of the chassis and call it a day. You have to build the whole entire chassis around the engine. With a brand new engine, it can be a little difficult for McLaren, so we'll have to see what happens.
Indeed so, as meanwhile, Lopez is currently top, getting held up by one of the Alfa Romeos. I think that might be Wilson he's coming up behind. As we look at De Rosa now, then, who's 2.6 seconds off in that middle sector. Looks like Lopez is going to go by on Amelia Wilson down into the first corner, which he does, so he gets moved on there. Now it looks like the AlphaTauri wants to overtake Wilson very soon. Just looking, Wilson is currently 19th, Valdinger in 13th, so far Wilson does appear to be struggling in the session, as Kupok can't seem to find a way through on Valdinger. It's safe to say that Kupok and Gal haven't really reacted after their first day, but I think if they were to react, I think Kupok and Gal will probably have a bit of a smile on their face in terms of pace. As
Chatfield and from Willows
goes up into 9th position, and of course I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of traffic, and in fact Willows actually getting by on De Rosa there, so I wonder if De Rosa is actually struggling a bit with that car, and it seems that Willows may be trying to make up the mileage that he lost yesterday, of course. And I did mention this yesterday, although we didn't see Willows much, he does have a brand new helmet for this season. Gone is the Lewis Hamilton design that he's been known for a number of seasons, and of course the Pedro Della Rosa design, and he's gone with a design that is based on a helmet that his brother made him on GT Sport when they were league racing together, and it's kind of based on that, so he's decided to adopt that design into the top class. So a little bit of a different design for Willows this season in terms of helmet, and getting away from the Hamilton retro helmets they used to wear for the last few seasons. So and so far, Willow's looking pretty good. Trying to
That's
see.
so nice to mention since I am having a change of helmet as well.
Yeah, and you'll be seeing that helmet, of course, on day 4, because of course you're taking part in that session in place of George Roke, of course.
And it's nice that both of us in the country booth are rocking new helmets this season because most of my career I've gone with just the simple helmet in the colors of my country's flag. But yeah, now it's a little bit different as we're watching Wilson right now, and safe to say these soft tires are wearing down quite quickly.
Indeed so, as Wilson now then makes her way through the flat-out left-hander, as now Chatfield will try and find a way through on the Haas there of, I'm not sure which Haas that is, that Chatfield's trying to get by. I think that might be Bartish Kloss trying to get by, I'm not sure. No, it's Michael Motter, in fact, it's a number 44 Haas that he was trying to get by there. As a look at De Rosa, who's just going around turns 3, 4, and 5 there, and making his way around the right-hander. It does seem like maybe it's... Whoa, he has a big moment going through into there, goes wide, and luckily it didn't go any more further to the left, otherwise he could have been in the wall there.
They're at least dealing with loss of grip right now, and 2 seconds there on his personal best in the first sector alone.
I'm surprised we didn't take a replay of that, because he did go very,
Chunk
very
has
wide.
improved to go up in the 7th fastest.
Chung goes into 7th place, gets in front of Evan Byrne, and it looks like, because I think we did touch upon it, as you touched upon earlier, it does look like the tyres seem to wear out quite a bit, and given that the Red Bulls were stuck behind traffic for quite a while, it may explain why they've not been able to improve at the moment. So maybe
They're gonna have to wait for another run to see their true potential, as Wilson 1.6 seconds down on her personal best. So yeah, these tires are wearing down dramatically, and obviously not good for everyone that's being impeded in their first lap. The other laps aren't going to be very competitive either, so take a look at the Red Bull's current positions with a grain of salt, because they're clearly much better than 6th and 8th place, that's for sure.
Yes, and so far, and just to add to that, of course, obviously Lopez currently at the top with a 1 minute 30.091. Well, it's obviously not the quickest that we've seen throughout these 2 sessions. Evan Byrne managed to be the only driver to break into the 1 minute 29s yesterday, a 1 minute 29.834 to be exact. So Red Bull so far have been the quickest around here across the other 2 days, and they're still yet to get up to speed at the moment as we speak, as Carr is now, speaking of which, Byrne now gets up into 2nd place, so he does now get himself into the top 2, and he's now within a 10th of Franco Lopez, as Carr tries to find a way through. I think that's on Joseph Willows he's trying to get by, and gets it done pretty easily, although Willows is not giving that one up pretty easily, but
He might not have a clean flying lap either, though, because he's got Carr not too closely in front, but Lopez's current best time, if it happened yesterday, would have put him P2. So,
Indeed.
Just something to note.
Meanwhile, it looks like Gal's trying to get by on, I think this is Lopez he's trying to get by, and we've been wondering what the pace is like between the Honda and the Mercedes Power, because we believe that Mercedes might be a bit quicker than Honda, but we've not been concrete. It hasn't been concrete.
Doesn't want to let us know just yet. He's hanging by.
Yep, and I do wonder maybe when we get to Hockenheim whether we'll get an answer as to who may have the quickest engine or not and who has the slowest. From early indications, I think BMW might have the slowest plant at the moment in their first season. And in terms of the best engine, I think it's a toss-up between Mercedes and Honda at the moment. Although Ferrari do look like they've got a decent engine as well. It's just chassis-wise, they might not have the best car at the moment.
2.2 seconds down, these tires are shot. And on the topic of engines, the first half of Hockenheim is basically entirely DRS, so obviously we don't have DRS for real in these cars, but if we did, it would be. So yeah, the first half of Hockenheim, extremely high speed, the second part very technical. It's that first part where the engine can generate a lot of lap time, as we get a replay of Kaz's mistake here.
Yeah, but he looked like he just went a little bit too fast through into the chicane there. Again, could be a characteristic of these new car physics that we've got for this season, where the cars could be a little bit more snappy. Despite the fact that they're more grippy, it seems, compared to last season, it does seem that the cars are a little bit more snappy coming out of corners, really, and maybe that was something that Carl was trying to correct as he was coming around turn 4 there. So that's obviously, I think, something that we'll probably need to be keeping an eye on, especially during the races, Rob.
Looks improved, 4th place for him. Looks like Red Bull are finally kicking it up a notch.
Yep, but Mocho in the Haas, who is once again having a very good session, currently splitting the two Red Bulls at the moment. And I did ask this question to Rahul Patel yesterday. If the pace of the Haas is anything to go by, could we potentially see some similar pace that we saw from Haas back in 2018 when they had both Gamba and Rogue?
It could happen. Or it could be even better than that.
Perhaps indeed. And
Sontag and Proust to go into 18th.
Currently 18th. De Rosa's still struggling at the moment in that McLaren, whereas his teammate Joseph Willows currently in 10th position. So I guess in a way we didn't really get a full conclusive picture with BMW at the moment, because you can see Willows is in 10th position, 9 tenths off of Franco Lopez, but you've got De Rosa down in 19th, and of course we had Willows who only did 1 lap yesterday, and who knows really, maybe this car may suit Willows' style a little bit more, maybe not De Rosa's, who knows really, but obviously we'll have to find that out when we get to Hockenheim, where if it is expected that BMW doesn't have a very powerful engine, they might suffer around at Hockenheim, the McLarens, but we'll wait and see. As Verderi and the Aston Martin goes into 18th, and I think you are right, the tyres are definitely more shot for Kirishima De Rosa, because he was 5 seconds off of Lopez that time by, and I think he's just managing tyre. I think he's just roaming around just to see how the car is like with tyre wear, basically, because so far he hasn't got a pit indicator.
He's been on this set since the start of the session, so he's only had really one big opportunity of a flying lap.
Yep, indeed.
Look at it, so far down in Sector 1.
Indeed, as my YouTube stream is starting to be a bit of a pain in the arse at the moment. As I'm just having to refresh the page there at the moment, just to get the stream to fully work. But anyway, so we've just it's just under 27 minutes to go in this session. This is what the leaderboard currently looks like then. It is currently Lopez at the top with Byrne in second, Mocho in third position with Roke in fourth, Quarg in fifth, Chatfield is in sixth with Carr in seventh, then it is Chung in eighth, Galloway in ninth with Willows in 10th, finally able to do more than 1 lap unlike yesterday, Perinen in 11th, Patel in 12th, Gall in 13th, followed by Kloss in 14th, Kupok in 15th, Valdinger in 16th, followed by Martins in 17th, nearly said Martinez there, it's Martins, with Verderi in 18th, Sontag in 19th, De Rosa 20th, Wilson down in 21st, seems to be struggling at the moment, and Jamie Griffiths in 22nd and last. So far, the only driver to be over 3 seconds off, and in fact, he's actually 1.2 seconds off of 21st place, Amelia Wilson. So I wonder if his tyres may be burnt out quite quickly. Although he has improved that occasion, but he's still over 3 seconds off of Lopez so far in this session. It looks like Quarg maybe having a bit of a twitch coming through into turn 3 there, and just about to correct it here. But we are seeing it. I think it's fair to say we are seeing quite a lot of mistakes today, Rob.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the first day of testing we had for Formula 2 last season. Those cars were a handful to drive, and drivers just kept making little tiny mistakes there at Oschersleben. Now it looks like we're having a similar phenomenon for the F1 car.
Perhaps indeed, as we look at De Rosa, who is... De Rosa is finally going to be coming into the pits this time by, and so he's finally going to be able to ditch those shot tyres that he's got and go onto a fresh pair of tyres. But will it be enough to potentially get him closer to Willows in this session? Of course, we do have a small threat of rain towards the back end of the session. Whether it will wetten up the track, I'm not sure. Of course, the rain that we did have at the beginning of the session that you would have seen on the screen, that's obviously now cleared. So as expected, it wasn't going to wetten up the track at all. It was only just a small shower, really, and it didn't really do much to the track conditions. So anyways, De Rosa now then is going to come into the pits.
And is finally going to end.
Yep, as now we look at Verderi, who crosses the line, and no improvement, stays in 18th position. Again, looks like Aston Martin really struggling at the moment, and well, it looks like maybe Aston Martin could be in for quite a long season in 2022. Who knows?
Aston Martin really wasn't that good last season, and when I saw in the signups in the team trends that was going down, I realized they were going to be the slowest car, and it does appear to be the case.
Yeah, it does
Now, having
appear.
said that, they're quicker than Williams, so it's neck and tuck between the two of them.
A little bit similar to real life in 2022 for the first half of the season, you'd say, Rob. So I guess there is some similarities with real life
Absolutely
2022.
right.
It seems to be some
Well,
similar.
first we had to copy paste the scenario heading into the last race with the championship fight, and now this we're copying real life too much. Maybe they should sue us. Just kidding.
Perhaps, as Chatfield there getting by on the Lamborghini-powered Williams there. I was going to say that was a comparison to Mercedes, but then I realised, no, Williams have no longer got Mercedes engine anymore. Obviously, we've been too used to them having Mercedes in the back of their car for several seasons. Now they've gone with Lamborghini for 2022, and as mentioned, so far it does look like they don't seem to have gained much compared to last season. Of course, I think they did have, if I'm not mistaken, on the trending, they did have a bit of a downward trend from what I saw, according to Felix Sontag. So it seems like it was only a small
Williams, I
downward.
think so as well.
I don't think it was a neutral trend, but it seems to be only a small downward trend that they've had. But clearly, it seems that the other teams that had downward trends, it's not been enough to get them a little bit higher up in the pecking order. So. Yeah, it does seem like they're kind of in a similar position to what they were last season, despite the engine change.
It's gonna be pretty difficult, Williams, and I'm not sure they got it right with the engine switch. We'll have to wait and see for that one though, because on this track we just can't get enough data to determine which is the best engine. We're gonna have to wait a little bit longer before we can make that assessment.
Yeah, indeed. As we look at Mocho now, then he's coming up to the back of one of the McLarens there. As we now ride on board with Jesus Perinen, who of course was able to place into third during yesterday's testing session, but so far down in 11th. It's been a little bit inconclusive, really, in terms of where Renault are in terms of pace, because yesterday we had Perinen up in third, but at the same time we had Quarg down in ninth position, and it seems the same case here today for Renault. Quarg up in fifth and Perinen down in 11th. It seems to be roles reverse for the Renaults today, so maybe we'll see Perinen open up the taps a little bit towards the end of the session, but we'll wait and see, really. It's very clear that tyres seem to be quite a thing around here during this session, especially because for anybody who's wondering, because I didn't mention this yesterday, we are using the soft tyres around here at Paul Ricard. Whatever tyres we'll be using for the final 2 days of Hockenheim, we need to wait and see, of course. Obviously, Yuri will announce that, I think, before tomorrow's test at Hockenheim, but yeah, as speaking of which, Perrin actually up on his personal best in the first sector, but only by 9,000 of a second, so it's not really much to go off there going into the second sector. So as he just makes his way into the bus stop chicane now, then just coming out of that chicane now, then. And let's see what it's like in the second sector. As soon as he comes out of that flat-out right-hander, he's soon going to be approaching. So through the flat-out right-hander he goes. Let's see what the middle sector looks like. And he's 17 thousandths up on his personal best. So he is still gaining time, but not by a lot, really. And so I don't think he's going to gain any positions unless he finds a lot of time in this last sector.
This Renault reminds me a lot of last season's Ferrari, judging by the pace it's got. It can be quick, but also can be having quite some discrepancies between the two drivers.
Perhaps indeed, and well, there seems to be maybe an inconsistency with both drivers. But Perinen does get up into 10th, in fact. He did actually gain a place, and goes 1,000th quicker than Joseph Willows. So both Renaults now into the top 10 in 5th and 10th. But again, it's really hard to tell what sort of pace Renault have in that car.
Yep, indeed, and it'll be interesting to see what happens as we let more time pass. But at the moment, Renault, I think, have a little bit of work to do, because I'm not sure they can challenge for wins again this season like they did last time. So if Hespernian wants to get his first win, he might have to wait a little bit longer.
And same goes for Roman Quarg if he wants to get his first win since the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix, a space of 8 seasons. So as Perinen now just coming out of the bus stop, it looks like Roke's just had a moment going through into the left-hander there as he's squirreling about. We might as well talk about George Roke, because we didn't talk about him too much yesterday. I think it's safe to say for this season, George was very lucky to get retained by Red Bull, given the competition he had, as De Rosa goes up to 15th on fresher tyres. But as I was saying, I think it's safe to say Roke could be a man under pressure this season, Rob.
I'm not so sure. I think he was definitely feeling a little bit more refreshed and more confident, of course. He's got a new teammate. Well, not entirely new because he has been teammates with him before in the past. So I think Rook could be under pressure if he doesn't perform, definitely. But I think he has it in him to perform this time around.
Yep, indeed, as Perinin doesn't improve on that occasion, so he stays 10th, and he's actually going back into the pit this time by. Currently 3 cars in the pit lane right now, that being Galloway, Videri, and Wilson at the moment. So we ride on board with Evan Byrne now then, as I think I don't know if he's just come out of the pits or not, but let's see what his first sector looks like, and he's 2 tenths down on his personal best. I think, judging for the fact that he's 2 tenths off of Lopez, it seemed pretty close between Byrne and Lopez in that first sector when Byrne did his best time earlier on as he comes around the chicane.
Use Sector 2 to determine the engine difference because Sector 2 is almost entirely straight lines, so yeah.
As we look now at Bartrish Kloss, meanwhile, who's currently 14th, of course, making his return to the series like Michael Mocho is, but so far, looking at both data testing, it does seem like Mocho has had the measure of Kloss so far in the Haas, and so that's obviously something to keep an eye on going into Hockenheim if that ends up being the same thing. As Byrne just comes out of the left-hander now, then as we now look at De Rosa, who's just trying to find a way through on the Alfa Romeo there, which he does. We did mention earlier we got up into 15th position, so 11th and 15th now for the 2 McLarens. So we were worried yesterday that they might be backmarker teams for after day 1, but who knows? They might be a midfield team after all for this season at least with BMW, given that Willows is 11th and De Rosa is in 15th position. So we'll have to wait and see on that one as we
They
ride
will
on
be
board.
getting lapped a couple of times this season, but they're not going to be the slowest. And sorry to interrupt, we're riding with Kipok here.
We're right on board with QPOC. Of course, AlphaTauri have gone back to basics really in terms of their design, and it's definitely helped them so far because they seem to have taken a massive leap forward compared to last season. Although they are currently 13th and 16th, but I think compared to where they were last season, that's obviously better. As Griffiths improves, and he's now under 3 seconds now behind Lopez, but he's still 2 tenths off of Amelia Wilson. But I think we'll have to wait and see with McLaren. Really, there could be races where they could be in the midfield, but if the engine is as slow as what we're expecting it to be, judging from the first day, then perhaps they might struggle on power tracks this season. But only time will tell, of course. As now coming around the double right-hander goes Evan Byrne, as he's just getting some race runs in. Meanwhile, Galloway coming up behind. That's Armar Carr, who's stuck behind. I think that's a Williams in front that he's coming up behind, going towards the chicane there. Galloway not able to get the move done there.
Think about going for the move, but he can't do it.
Yep, and so far the Ferraris in the session currently 6th and 9th, so I'd say slightly better than yesterday, but I'd still say it's not ideally where they want to be right now. Byrne crosses the line, still remains in 2nd place for the moment, and still going to be pedalling around at the moment as he just negotiates through the first couple of corners.
Ferrari, you can remember that last season in Catalonia. In one of the days, Ferrari had one car top, the other car like 14th or something, as Lopez got very wide there. Clearly struggling with tire at the minute, and he's made a little bit of an error into the boss right-hander. Now he's making another error into the left-hander. He's going to get passed by this Williams here. No, he's not. But clearly pushing tires a little bit too much.
Yep, as we're going to take a look here and see what happened with Lopez. And I think, again, it could be a case of the new physics, really. It seems that once again Lopez pushing the limits of where he can go with this car, and it does seem like the cars, as we mentioned a couple of times during this stream, seem to be a lot more trickier to drive than what they were last season.
Yes, absolutely.
As we now
of course we'll have to wait until we can get to race conditions for the first time and see what it's truly like. Griffiths improves, meanwhile he's no longer in last, he's 19th fastest now.
Yep, he's got ahead of Videri, Sontag and Wilson down in last. I mentioned yesterday that the Alfa Romeo looked to be decent, although it does seem today they might be struggling a bit. They are 17th and 22nd, so a bit hard to read really with Alfa Romeo, I think it's fair to say, because they were roughly with the Lamborghinis yesterday, but it seems today they've seemed to have dropped back a little bit. So, might be a little bit of a tough one there to judge with Alfa Romeo.
Have Galloway trying to overtake Ka.
But can't get it done. Car stays ahead for the time being. Q-Pop goes up into 14th, so the Alpha Towers are now 13th and 14th. At this stage, as Byrne now then is going to come down the pit straight and across the line. It will go the Irishman in the Red Bull, and again doesn't improve. And once again, he's just going to continue going around. He's not going to plan to come into the pits at any point at the moment, as he just negotiates around the first two corners now. Then Chatfield, Chung, and Perinin are the only three drivers currently in the pit lane right now, as Byrne negotiates through turns 3, 4, and 5. Galloway trying to look to the inside of Armagh Car, but can't get it done, as they now make their way towards the final corner. As now making their way onto the pit straight now then, as Carr and Galloway still getting held up by that Williams in front at the moment, as Galloway losing a bit of car slipstream to cross the line but doesn't improve. As meanwhile, just looking around at the rest of the leaderboard at the moment, Lamborghini look like they were a little bit better than what they were yesterday, as Galloway tried to get past on Car. They're coming out of turn 2, but he didn't work out. But as I was saying, Lamborghini look a tad bit better than what they were yesterday, but I'd still say not really ideal, really, because if you look at the gap between Car and Chung, it is still roughly 3 tenths between them. So yeah, they're a bit better, but I would say still a bit of concern at the moment for Lamborghini.
Well, Lamborghini are a little bit closer to the front, but I don't see them capable of pulling the same kind of performances they had last season. I don't think we'll be seeing the Lambo on pole in Australia this time.
And nor do you, so you don't think they'll be able to get what was it, 2 wins last season, 1 each from Chung and Patel, like we saw last season?
I don't think this car can win races unless there's something very chaotic going on. But they might nab themselves a podium if they're lucky.
Perhaps, as Evan Byrne, meanwhile,
That's
in
my
the Red
opinion.
Bull. Yeah, as Evan Byrne in the Red Bull is now coming back to the pits this lap, he might get a fresh set of tyres on and go again to see if he can try and knock Lopez off the top of the timing sheets in the Red Bull. Of course, Byrne probably feeling, because obviously he's moved away from Renault after what had been a frustrating few seasons with the French manufacturer, and he probably feels, looking at the pace so far of the Red Bull, this might be his best chance to finally win his first World Championship this season, basically replacing Franco Gamba, who of course won the championship with Red Bull in 2021, and he's looking to see if he can pretty much help Red Bull kick off where they left off, really. And as mentioned, he hopes that this is probably his best chance to maybe finally win that first World Championship that's been eluding him for so long.
Could be the case, but there's one thing we absolutely have to remember. Last season, Mercedes took both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship to the final race. This season, they have a much better car. I'm not saying Byrne can't win. He definitely has a solid chance, but it's not going to be easy.
Yep, as we just saw Kloss there overtaking into the chicane there. Kloss currently in 15th position, as Byrne, meanwhile, comes back into the pits as we're expecting. We're now looking at Joseph Willows in the McLaren. He's currently 11th place at the moment, as he now makes his way into the final corner and onto the pit straight now. Then he will go, as he will now cross the line to finish his lap. He doesn't look like he's on an improvement, so he crosses the line and nope, stays in P11. Looks like he's been on them tyres for quite a while now, so maybe we'll be expecting him to come back into the pits to get a fresh set of tyres in that McLaren, as he will now make his way towards turns 3, 4 and 5 very, very soon, as he now comes around those sections of corners. We're on board with Lloyd Chung, who's trying to get by on the Aston Martin of Andre Verderi heading into the first corner. Is Chung going to get the move done into the first corner? She's going to have a go, but not able to pull the move off, and Verderi stays in front for the time being. Chung might get him though on traction, which he does, and Chung breezes past the Aston Martin. As Chatfield meanwhile improves, but remains in 6th position, as so he's been able to get a little bit more lap time on fresher tyres. The top two now both in the pits, Lopez and Byrne, and we'll wait and see if we're going to see any more improvements. And so far it does appear like the rain has stayed away, because around about this point, I think yesterday we saw the rain come down, but of course it is only a 5% chance of rain at the plus 30 mark, and well, there's clearly no sign of it from what I can see. So I might jinx myself here, so knock on wood. I think I think we might avoid the rain this time in day 2, and I've probably jinxed it by saying that. We'll see.
Well, in the past few minutes, it has been raining a little bit harder in my place outside my window, but thankfully there's no rain here out on the racetrack.
Indeed, as Chung has just come out of the left-hander there, as Chung will now approach the final 2 turns the racetrack in the Lamborghini. It doesn't look like she's on an improvement at the moment. Of course, Chung was able to get Lamborghini's first ever victory last season back at the Austrian Grand Prix, but so far the lap times that we've seen for the Lambo, it might be difficult for them to replicate that amazing first season that they had in 2021, as she goes 2.4 seconds slower than Lopez on that occasion. I think it might be a case of she's been on these tyres for quite a while now, and she's just probably getting some race runs underneath her before she heads back to the pit. Meanwhile, Wilson comes out on track.
He got a taste of glory at the start of. Lamborghini got a taste of glory midway through last season, I'd say. But I think now they really need to start to settle into their role as a midfield team and build up from there, because their rookie season was fantastic, but it's not something they can repeat so easily.
No, definitely not. And obviously, I think Jackie Stewart even said as well, hold that thought, because Chung has made a little bit of an error going through the chicane around the same section where Patel had a spin earlier on, although on this occasion Chung doesn't spin, but clearly carrying a little bit too much speed into the first part of the chicane.
One Lamborghini struggling here with oversteer, and now the other Lamborghini struggling with a little bit of understeer over there.
Yeah, as I was saying though, Jackie Stewart.
Going to say about Jackie Stewart?
I was just going to bring that up. Jackie Stewart said during Stewart Grand Prix second year in Formula 1, during their launch, of course, of their 1998 car, he even said, technically, the second season is more difficult than the first season because people expect a little bit too much of you in the second season. So I guess you could kind of use that for Lamborghini, because let's be honest, last season was an amazing season, and I think it's fair to say, including myself, I was expecting potentially a little bit more from Lamborghini in their second season, but clearly they're finding it difficult in their second season.
It's the first time I've ever heard this quote, but it's definitely a very, very valid one. I never actually heard it before.
I remember watching it on because I remember watching the F1 98 season review, and he said that right at the beginning of the season review, really, when during the Stewart Grand Prix launch, he said that quote. So yeah, maybe the same thing kind of apply here for Lamborghini. The second season clearly proving a lot more tricky than the first season.
Yeah, it could be the case.
Meanwhile, we've got just over 7 minutes to go of day 2, and I've noticed that the skies look to have been clearing a little bit. I did notice it was quite cloudy for quite a while in this session, but it looks like the sky has now got a little bit more brighter on top of the so it looks like maybe the rain is going to stay away, unlike what the weather forecast was suggesting. But as I was saying, with just under 7 minutes to go, this is what the leaderboard looks like. Lopez top, Byrne in second, Mocho in third, followed by Roke in fourth, then Quag in fifth, Chatfield in 6th, followed by Carr 7th, Chung in 8th, Galloway in 9th, with Perinin in 10th, Willows is in 11th, with Patel in 12th, then it is Gal 13th, Kupok in 14th, Kloss in 15th, with De Rosa in 16th, Valdinger in 17th, with Martins in 18th, Griffiths 19th, Vaderi 20th, Sontag 21st, and Wilson in 22nd. And last as Perinin is trying to find a way through on one of the Alpha Towers here, going into the bus stop.
We'll be getting a little bit of a Renault Honda engine comparison here, and I don't think the Renault is the strongest engine anymore, but it's still quite competitive.
Perhaps indeed, and obviously something to keep an eye on, especially when we go to Hockenheim. Chung will be coming into the pits this time by. Whether she'll be able to come back out for maybe 1 or 2 more laps, we will have to wait and see. She's currently in 8th position at the moment as we speak, just in front of both Galloway and Perinin, as Chung now they're making her way through turns 3, 4 and 5 now then on the racetrack in the Lamborghini, using a bit of curb on the outside before she makes her way through this long swooping right-hander now then. And as mentioned, she will be coming into the pits this time by, as Galloway meanwhile improves to go up into 8th position. So Chung now down into 9th, so 6th and 8th now for both the Ferraris, and so maybe a better session in store for Ferrari, but still, as mentioned earlier, still not ideal for the Maranello team at this stage.
Well, they've gotten closer to the front. On day 1, They were P8 and P10 with their best effort over a second slower than P1. Now they're gotten much closer. Chatfield just 4 tenths behind Lopez, and also Galloway 6 tenths behind Lopez. So Ferrari are looking better than yesterday, but they're still looking worse than last season.
Yeah, indeed. Meanwhile, Wilson is up on her personal best in the middle sector. She is currently in last place. She has gone a tenth quicker than her personal best in the middle sector, so we'll wait and see if she's able to get out of last position as she uses a tad bit of curb on the outside there. Here comes George Roke coming towards the end of the first sector, but he's 3 tenths down in that first sector compared to his personal best, so he's still not been able to get in front of Michael Mocho, who it's fair to say has had a very impressive session so far in the Haas. And as mentioned, could we potentially see what Haas did in 2018, where they were trying to upset the top teams for quite a bit during 2018? Maybe that could be a thing we could see with Haas in 2022. Both Kloss and Wilson improve on their times, but they both remain in the positions they are currently at, although Kloss is now roughly 8 thousandths off of David Kupok now, and Wilson only was able to improve by just a tad bit, so that suggests to me that she would have lost time in that last sector because she was still 2.6 seconds behind before she made that improvement, and she was 1 tenth off in the middle sector, so that does suggest
Perhaps.
didn't see any traffic around her, so I'm going to presume she might have made a tad. She might have not hooked up the last sector as well as she thought. Martins improves but remains
It's improved.
18th position. He's just under a tenth behind Valdinger. As meanwhile, the two Red Bull teams there going side by side in the 10th fray. As Kupok gets overtaken by I think that might have been George Rote that overtook him there, going into turn 3. As Roke, meanwhile, no, it was Byrne in fact, because this is Roke we're looking at now. Then, so Roke coming around turns 3, 4, and 5. He's got a couple of cars in front of them, one of them being a Renault and a Williams. So Roke will be hoping he doesn't get held up on this particular occasion, and he now makes his way through into the left-hander. Let's see what the end of the first sector is going to look like, and he's 4 tenths down on his personal best. We have just over 3 minutes to go here at day 2.
Yep, and whilst we definitely had a lot of them in the launch season, I have to say we have a lot of white cars here. Maybe too many, who knows? But they're quick cars. That's what matters most of all, not the paint job.
Well, that was something that I think Amar Kar brought up after the Haas launch, that there was too many white cars, and maybe, but I think Yuri actually brought it up yesterday before me and Ra went on commentary, that luckily I think you're able to tell the differences between each of the cars, because they do have a unique style with the white, especially with the Renault, which I believe the majority believe is the best livery on the grid, given the fact that it's obviously a retro 80s livery really, and I think it's safe to say that we do love our retro liveries in this community.
Yes, indeed. Thankfully, we can use different color graphics, because imagine if we had to do every single team with white livery, we gave them white graphics. That would be hell.
Indeed, as we now look at Quarg now, then he's trying to look to the inside as he gets through on the Williams there, and I think we're going to ride on board with the remaining drivers for the rest of the session now then, as Mocho is just coming around the final corner now in the Haas, and I think he'll be definitely happy with how today has gone for him really, as Mocho now then comes across the line in the Haas, and he does not improve, stays in third for the time being. Sontag, I think, will get one flying lap in before the session comes to a close, as he's just going to start his lap, although he is holding up Franco Lopez, who, unless Byrne is able to get a quicker time in, may end up staying at the top of the timing sheets. Lopez doesn't improve, says on 1 minute 30.091. Here comes Amelia Wilson in the Alfa Romeo. She now crosses the line, and the American doesn't improve, stays where she is. Galloway is finished. He's coming back into the pits as we now ride on board with Andrea Vaderi, as he just comes out of the final corner. And I do believe, I'm not really sure what the design is for his helmet this season, because I don't think it's a Giovinazzi helmet. It's either a Lewis design or a Norris design. I'm not 100% sure on that, but thanks for clarifying that. It's a Norris design. It seems that everybody seems to like Lando Norris's helmets. But anyway, we've seen a few more times. Gal doesn't improve. He stays in 13th. Here comes Johannes Martins in the Aston Martin. He stays where he is at the moment in P18. Rahul Patel, across the line he will go in the Lamborghini, and he does not improve, stays where he is, and he's coming into pits in this lap. Quark doesn't improve, stays where he is. Same goes for, I think that was Rope that was behind. Carr stays in 7th, as probably just getting race runs in for this session. Chatfield across the line and stays where he is for the time being. Valdinger in the Alfa Romeo, currently 17th right now. He crosses the line and he stays where he is, as Mocho and Lopez are both coming into the pits this time by. Sontag has been able to get one more flying lap in, and I think it's going to be only one really, because I don't think he's going to have...
Lopez on the lap, so it's definitely been impeded.
So I think Valdinger is going to was the last one to cross the line, because I don't think Sontag is going to have enough time to do a second lap. 5, 4, 3, 2, and then 1 and 0, and the checker flag is out. That's the end of the session. So yeah, Valdinger is the last car to cross the line there. Then as Sontag crosses the line on his final flying lap here at Paul Ricard, and he does not improve and he stays in 21st position. Chung just getting some mileage in the Lamborghini. Lambo seem to be a bit better than what they were yesterday, but still not really ideal for them. Videri now then comes around the final corner as he now makes his way onto the pit straight now then, as Videri now then will come across the line in the Aston Martin, and he does not improve. He stays where he is, as the McLaren of Joseph Willows crosses the line, stays in 11th position. Perinen across the line in the Renault, and he stays in 10th. Gal stays in 13th. Martins in the Aston Martin, the 2021 Formula 2 champion, doesn't improve and stays in 18th, as Chung, I think that is, just comes into the pits. The Frenchman, Roman Quarg, he now crosses the line in the Renault, and he stays in 5th, as Rote doesn't improve, Carr doesn't improve. De Rosa looks like he's also not an improving, he doesn't improve. Chatfield in the Ferrari across the line, he will go, and he doesn't improve. Here comes Valdinger, the last car to cross the line, the Hungarian crosses the line, he looks like he's not going to improve, and he doesn't. Stays in 17th, which means Lopez finishes top with Bernie second, and a surprise Michael Mocho in 3rd position. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that Mercedes and Red Bull still got very good cars underneath them, but I think the happiest man out of this testing session probably going to be Michael Mocho, Rob.
I think he's the happiest.
And I think Rob kind of cut out there a little bit. So as
Sorry,
he was trying...
I said I think he's the happiest man in all of France.
Probably is indeed. Well, there you have it then. That has been it from day 2 here at pre-season testing. I hope you have enjoyed it. It has been a very interesting session indeed, and that was of course the last session at Paul Ricard. Of course, tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. BST we will have day 3 of pre-season testing, but it will be the first day at Hockenheim over in Germany. So during that test, it will be quite interesting to see what the straight line speed is going to be like for these cars, because Hockenheim is renowned for being mostly a power track than a downforce track. So we'll be interested to see what the straight line speed of the cars is going to be like, especially for the 6 engine manufacturers that are in this series. But until then, guys, that has been it. I hope you have enjoyed it. So thank you all for watching. I've been JW97. He's been Robert Ionescu, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.